the Goldmine Podcast.
Lance, welcome to the Goldmine.
Thanks for having me, Danny. Good to be here.
Yeah, this is great, man. You have a really interesting and unique background, and just kind of like prepping for this, talking to you and everything. You described yourself as almost like a fund / syndicator, like middleman between like GP, LP. So walk me through that, because obviously you have to understand, if you're a translator, you have to understand both languages, right? So walk me through how you came to be so well versed and how you were able to understand the language of the LPs really well as the language of the GP.
So it definitely is an interesting experience that sort of has led to this. But I think, I got into real estate in 2008 on the private lending side. And in 2011, me and my partners decided to pivot into really running what amounts to a fund of funds, an open-ended fund of funds where we had discretionary capital that we raised from high net worth individuals. So, really our whole strategy was go out, find the best of the best operators in any given real estate, asset class, multifamily, self-storage, office, retail, you name it. And then, vet them, approve them, and then we'd underwrite their deals and then allocate capital into those deals. So in the early days, we were really a super LP, right? So for us, we were like professional limited partners. So that's like my background is like, well, what does it take to like conduct due diligence on a sponsor? How do you vet a deal? So those sorts of things. And then being fund managers ourselves, we're running a fund, we're raising capital from high net worth individuals, really. So now you're on both sides. We ended up having in what was an accidental business is that as we started allocating capital into various deals, we realized that we always targeted like emerging sponsors. So these are guys who are, really good at what they do, good real estate guys, but they don't have 20-year track records. And a big pain point for us was that they just weren't very good with the back office stuff, like reporting and financials. And, that's where they kind of fell down. So I took an internal department that, administered our fund, made it an external facing division, and we started offering fund administration services for sub-institutional real estate funds. And as part of that, we had a fund advisory practice. So we'd help, guys, architect their funds and, get them up and running and things like that. And that took off, and it's now, known as RiveraVest. We rebranded in 2017. But so that's the other interesting. So you got all these investors coming into these funds. So now I'm like squarely in the middle, man. It's my job and my team's job to prepare the financials and make sure that everyone's doing things, in a fair and balanced, fair and equitable manner. Right. So it's just like, that's really where I've sat, is just kind of in the middle of all of this, right? When you're helping someone architect the fund, I have to think about, okay, what's your strategy? What's the right waterfall and the economics and the fees with an eye toward what's marketable, right? Like we've got to make, great. You got the world's greatest strategy, but we have to make sure that it's interesting and appealing from an economic standpoint for LPs. And so, helped over 200 guys, and gals architect their funds. That's a lot of conversations, being had, a lot of funds, $3 billion in assets under administration in at VeriVest, so I've just seen a lot. And so I think that's what has kind of put me in that position, is thinking about, putting myself in the shoes of the LP, putting myself in the shoes of the GP, how do we remove friction from this process so that it just works better?